Fucked by space and go fast through author, Nangang Phi Fei copywriting. After the space of the summer solstice merged with the small plane that I traversed, I returned to the original plane, but was kicked off by my original plane. Later, the space took her to travel everywhere. In the eyes of everyone, the skyrocketing Xia solstice just wanted to scold her, this thief, why always kick her out of her small world inexplicably after she smashed a piece of the world. Read the warm reminder before the article, enter with caution if you are unwell. 1. The protagonist is a cultivator who is wearing a cultivator, so he can cultivate magic skills. If someone has to take advantage of modern cultivator, I will beat you too. The protagonist is a cultivator. The cheats are huge. All logic is based on the premise that the protagonist has strong cheats. Readers who don't have cheats, you give me the story. There is no logic, I will beat you. 3. The author is an old white reader who has read Ziobai essays for N years, so he can only write Ziobai essays, not world masterpieces, and then I will hit you with Ziobai essays. Content tag, unlimited flow, fast piercing through the book era search keywords, protagonist, summer solstice supporting actor, pre-accepted article rejecting love brain host for collection others, quick pass, no CP, portable space. 1 sentence introduction. The unlucky host is taken by space to travel through aspiration, hard work to get rich. Brief comment on VIP works. Xiaoji's portable space evolved into a world that needed more energy, so the space took her to travel quickly. Xiaoji also began to practice in different worlds. At the same time, he used his own cultivation ability to help people in different worlds to solve the problems. The problems generated by the world have gained the power of massive beliefs, leaving widely circulated myths and legends in every world. From an alternative perspective, this story describes the quick passing story of a cultivator who travels to different worlds. The theme is novel, the content of the story in the small world is ups and downs, the writing is humorous, and the ending of the story is always unexpected and worthwhile. First reading. The summer solstice smoothly rised from the plane of the 1970s back to his own world and returned to his room. In the long decades of the 70th plane, her original world has only passed for a while. After checking it, she found that her space merged with the 70 plane. Her mind was muddled, and she hadn't figured out what was going on in her own way, why the space had changed, and an accident happened. There was a dizziness in his head, and his ears were full of noisy and disorderly sounds. After the dizziness passed, Xiaoji found that the environment around him had changed and he came to a strange place. This is a big road. There are modern buildings on both sides of the road. Looking at the sun's angle, it was about noon. There were people coming and going on the road. She only took a few glances and didn't realize what was going on. The surroundings suddenly scratched. There was a hurricane, the high-rise buildings were instantly destroyed, and the pedestrians on the road were blown away before they even screamed. Xiaoji looked at the mess around him, confused, and didn't understand what had happened, how suddenly it was a scene of the end of the world. In the mess, she is like an audience outside the world, everything around her has been destroyed by the great changes, and she is still standing in place, even the strands of hair have not moved. Everything was wrong. The whole person was stunned during the summer solstice, and I faintly heard a full hiccup, but there was such a mess around her, and everyone around her was blown away. How could someone be hiccuping? She felt that she might be illusory. Listened. Just when she was still wondering, the familiar dizziness came again, and her ears were messed up. Xiaoji found that she suddenly went to a new place. Soon the end of this place was the same as before, and she was surprised. The hurricane was devastated, and then she began to dizzy again. The Xia solstice quickly switched several scenes in this way. Not long after staying in each scene, the surrounding environment was quickly destroyed, and then she quickly left to go to a new place. She didn't know what was going on, she was extremely disturbed. Just at this moment, the dizziness came again, she switched scenes again, and came to a forest. The summer solstice looked anxiously, wondering if it should be windy again in the next second. Holding her heart, she waited tremblingly for the hurricane to come, but to her surprise, there was no strange wind this time. After she waited for a few minutes, the surrounding trees were still fine. Because of the various strange changes before, Xiaozhi was in this quiet mountain forest, and did not dare to make unnecessary movements. She stayed quietly in place, watching the surroundings with her eyes looking left and right. There was a gentle breeze blowing in her ears, and the sunlight sprinkled on her through the leaves. She felt the temperature in the air and judged that the current time was about summer. She is also wearing summer clothes, short-sleeved t-shirt, hot pants and sandals. It is possible that she is in the mountains and the surrounding trees are tall and filter part of the heat in the air, and the temperature around her body is fairly moderate. After waiting for about half an hour, the scene did not switch, and the summer solstice boldly began to explore in the woods. She can also be regarded as an experienced traverser. She traveled to a 70s essay in the 21st century and became the heroine in it. She lived in that world to more than 80 years old. She used the power of the prophet in advance to establish her own business empire. I also met Gu Chaoying there. Gu Chaoying awakened her to break free from the shackles of the plot, and took her to practice martial arts, forcibly infusing her cultivation base, so that she could be repelled back to her own world with martial arts. She thought that she was going to die old in the source world, but she did not expect to cross again, and it seemed that she crossed several times in a short period of time. The familiar dizziness of passing through the barriers of the world has long been remembered in her heart. She doesn't know why she crosses so frequently, and what happened to those worlds before. It is a pity that Gu Chaoying is not by her side now, and she will never find an enthusiastic senior to help her. While exploring the mountains and forests, Xiaozhi couldn't help but begin to thank Gu Chaoying again. She had always insisted on taking her hunting in the 1970s, otherwise she would still be a waste wood that can only rely on space to make a living. She has just tried to use the greatly changed space, and found that she can't take out things from the inside, and it's impossible to put the outside things in. Xiaozhi thought about it for a long time, and came to a conclusion that it might be because the space and the plane were merged. Her own identity should now become a kind of heavenly existence, so she couldn't interfere with the people and things inside. The space can't be used and it hurts. When I came to the new world, I didn't know if there was any danger. In case there was something wrong, wouldn't she have to kneel? Not long has passed since the time of her breakthrough. Xiaozhi has not changed her role from an ordinary person to a cultivator. She is still thinking of an ordinary human being. She never thought of using her spiritual consciousness to explore the surrounding situation to reduce her danger. The odds. After confirming that there was nothing beside him that could pose a threat to him, Xiaozhi began to check whether there were other changes in his body. After the examination, she breathed a sigh of relief. There was no damage to her body, and the space on her body probably protected her when she was crossing. She checked the jade slip that Gu Chaoying had given her again. When she left the plane of 70, she placed the jade slip in the space, but after experiencing the accident of the merger of the space and the plane, the jade slip turned into a touch streamer plunged into her sea of consciousness, floating quietly in it, not being swallowed by space. At that time, she was busy with something shocking about returning to the source world, and before she had time to check the situation of Yujian, this meeting was just empty. Xiaozhi couldn't help guessing that Gu Chaoying should be a very powerful power, otherwise the jade slips she gave to herself should have disappeared like the protective clothing she wore before. After all, the protective clothing was produced on the assembly line, and the grade was still too high. Low, disappeared when she returned to her source world. The only things she would take to another world were the jade slips that Gu Chaoying had sent, and her own room for variation. The space can only be seen and cannot be used, that is to say, her golden finger only has a jade slip. Xiaozhi used his divine sense to touch the small light spot in the sea of consciousness, and immediately saw the new content that he could only read after breaking through. The first thing that catches the eye is a few words that are unique to Gu Chaoying O. You can actually see these words, it means that you have broken through. It is not easy to break through with your aptitude. The spirit is commendable. It seems that ruins can be taught. Now I will teach you some exclusive secrets. When Xiaozhi saw these words, the corners of his mouth twitched a few times, as if he saw Gu Chaoying's face with paralysis that he considered to be the world's #1 in labor and capital. Although Gu Chaoying's message was very awkward, she still had to carefully check the contents of the jade slip. The content inside is still very reliable. There are cultivation methods from the foundation building to the golden alchemy period, and some alchemy, refining, drawing amulet, formation and attacking spells, and some identification materials are planted. Method. The content is detailed, the language is straightforward, the description is modern, and its systematic nature almost makes Xiaozhi think that he is reading physics, chemistry, and biology textbooks. Xiaozhi looked at the modern alchemy method in the jade slip, and was shocked by the chemical equation inside. She did not expect that alchemy was so easy. She finally knew how Gu Chaoying used modern technology to mass-produce these unscientific armors in the previous world. As long as these things are systematized and the laws are mastered, it is not difficult to use mechanical means to achieve mass production. The difficulty is that it is not easy to obtain aura and discover this new system. I don't know if there is any aura in this world. Xiaozhi thought about it and felt it immediately. Then she was very disappointed. The aura here was very thin. She tried to absorb it and found that at this rate of absorption, she didn't know how long it would take to cultivate. A ray of spiritual power. What can I do? Xiaozhi looked at the lowest level spells in the jade slip and felt that the amount of spiritual energy needed to consume was a lot. She is now in the early stage of foundation building. Gu Chaoying described in the jade slip that she didn't know how the foundation was built during the summer solstice. She took the most aura reserves during foundation building as an example. To practice the techniques she provided, as long as the skills she mastered were average. Up to 20 fireball spells can be released. Fireball is a relatively low-level spell, and there are more advanced spells behind. Gu Chaoying didn't give examples one by one, but she listed the amount of spiritual power required for each spell. Xiaozhi is very entangled now, she doesn't know whether to take this opportunity to practice attacking spells, because the spiritual energy here is really too thin. She is afraid that practicing the spells will consume all spiritual power, in case she can't absorb enough spiritual energy to transform spiritual power. Her meridians and danshan will shrink due to insufficient spiritual energy support, causing the realm to regress. She has no spiritual roots, and finally uses martial arts to enter the Tao, but she doesn't want to fall back to become a martial artist. And it's not clear what kind of world this is, without spiritual power, and don't know if it will encounter any danger. Xiaozhi thought for a while and decided not to practice spells for the time being. Although she did not know how to use spells, she still remembered the martial arts she practiced before. As long as she has spiritual power, her body strength is comparable to a magic weapon. It's better than the price. This world's poor spirituality not only prevents Xiaozhi from practicing spells, but also prevents her from fasting. She has to eat to maintain her physical fitness. Because Bigu also needs spiritual power to maintain. Gu Chaoying said in the jade slip that after the monk enters the foundation building period, he can use his spiritual power to replace the energy provided by the whole body, without having to eat. This is the so-called Bigu. Bigu needs to use his spiritual power to perform non-Bigu. I haven't learned any spells in the summer solstice, and naturally I don't know Bigu, so it is currently impossible. The author has something to say. Gu Chaoying, it is an indigenous person played by the protagonist Lotus in Bad Scum is better to cultivate immortals. The book's predecessor is the 4th volume of Scattered Scum, 70 Educated Youth. It doesn't matter if you haven't read it, and it doesn't affect the reading of this book. I'm back without CP channel again. I went to the romance side to fill in the holes before. Oh my god, I'm exhausted. Romance novels are really not something that people can write, it's too difficult. Tell you why I switched from romance to no CP channel. I signed a contract by romance and planned to write romance all the time, but I ran into obstacles when writing the first book and couldn't write the relationship line. So I told my husband that I blamed him and never talked about love to me. I didn't do anything that moved me, so I didn't have romantic material. I forced him to intercede with me. Then my husband would rather die and say, "There is a mirror in the toilet. You can take a look in the mirror yourself and you will know why I can't talk about love." Is this saying that I am ugly? At that time, I was so angry that I immediately lost the romance and turned to no CP. I want to use my words to slaughter the world's dog men. After reading Gu Chaoying's message on the summer solstice, she did not immediately learn the Bigu technique. Because she said that not all monks would choose Bigu. Although they were separated from the realm of mortals and became immortals, they were also human beings. They were not cultivating robots with unreasonable emotions. Only the kind of cultivators who would Bigu would. If cultivating immortals gains longevity, in such a long life, it has been so boring and unenjoyable. If you want to cultivate immortality, it is better to enter the soil early. Therefore, in order to enjoy and satisfy the appetite, the cultivator will choose to eat spiritual vegetables, fruit, and beast meat. These foods are rich in spiritual energy after being processed by the chef, and the taste is more delicious than ordinary ingredients. It can increase the cultivation level when eaten in the stomach. It is really a must-have for the lazy practice. Although the cultivation base gained through eating is not as good as cultivation and not as solid as hard cultivation, it is simply beautiful to be able to enjoy a life without suffering. However, Gu Chaoying also said that the world in which normal monks live is full of aura, so you can grow these aura-rich foods, but if the source world of the summer solstice does not have aura and cannot grow spiritual plants, you can only continue to eat ordinary people's food to maintain physical fitness. This can reduce the consumption of spiritual power. Ordinary ingredients only taste a little worse, and cannot increase her cultivation base. Compared with the reduced loss of spiritual energy, this shortcoming is acceptable. After reading Gu Chaoying's reminder, he felt the concentration of aura around him, and felt that this world should not have the spirit plants and spirit beasts she said, so he still had to eat ordinary people's food. As for the descriptions in some of the novels I read before, that mortal grains will have a negative impact on the cultivation of monks, Gu Chaoying did not say. Xiaozhi is even more inclined to say that she didn't say that, it should have no impact, otherwise she will definitely explain it, and she thinks that even if there is, it is estimated that those impacts have no spiritual power because the Bigu is exhausted, causing the meridians and Danshan to shrink seriously, so still have to eat. After summarizing the current situation, Xiaozhi currently does not feel hungry, so she decided to continue exploring the world. This mountain forest is very large. She doesn't have a map of the world or tools to identify the direction or terrain. She doesn't know where to walk with people and smoke, but she can still judge the direction of the downhill based on the trend of the mountain, so she simply in accordance with intuition, I found a direction casually. The summer solstice was gone for a long time, and it looked like 2 or 3 hours. She still didn't get out of the mountain. She didn't feel particularly tired because of her spiritual energy, but because she did not dare to consume too much spiritual energy storage, she did not use spiritual energy to give I cool down, so I sweat a thin layer on my body. After more than 3 hours of trekking, using her spiritual sense to scan the terrain and avoiding the wild animals in the mountains, she had no surprises all the way, and finally saw the hope of going down the mountain, but the more she went down the mountain, the more wrong she felt at Xiaozhi. In the deep mountains before, the trees were older, with deep roots and strong water absorption capacity, so there was lush greenery there. But near the foot of the mountain, the yellowing of the trees is a bit more serious than in the deep mountains. Xiaozhi didn't know what was going on, but this abnormal situation made her feel alert, so she raised her spirits a bit and observed her surroundings more carefully. Soon she heard the voice of people coming from a distance. She had been walking before. Although her eyes and ears became more sensitive after the foundation was built, her ears were filled with the sound of her own footsteps, and the rustle of leaves being blown by the wind. The summer solstice was ignore the distant sound. After hearing the human voice, she found a big tree with luxuriant leaves compared to other trees and climbed up, hiding herself among the branches. She stared at the place where the human voice came from, and quickly saw several people. Shadow turned into black spots. She listened carefully, hoping to learn clues to the world from those people. After listening to the summer solstice for a long time, there was not much news. The group of people seemed to be singing. She didn't know where the folk song was. She didn't understand the meaning of the lyrics, so she could only vaguely hear things like mothers and stepmothers. Whenever the singer sang these two words, others would roar with laughter, and others would say afterwards, "The wind in the sun hole in the cloud, the heart of the stepmother of the scorpion's tail." From time to time there are some compliments in the singing, near sings really well. Others gloated and asked, "It is said that if you have a stepmother, you will have a stepfather, and it's great. Does your stepmother stay at home and beat your brothers every day? Your father doesn't care about you anymore." "Yes, De Zhuang, I heard your second aunt say that your stepmother was unwilling to marry in the first place, but she was forced into your house by her father and mother. She hates your house so much. You will have something in the future. Boil it." As the group talked, they laughed and talked. A filial son is afraid of his bad father, a good wife is most afraid of reckless husbands, and an orphan child is afraid of stepmothers. After listening to Xiaozhi for a long time, he extracted some central ideas from those lyrics and other people's ridicule, and coupled with his own brain supplements, he understood what the people over there were talking about. About the mother of the man named De Zhuang died, his father married a new wife, and the children had a stepmother, which was ridiculed by other children. When I heard this, Xiaozhi felt that the situation was a bit bad. The two names of Ernier and De Zhuang were not nice names. They were full of rustic flavor when they were spoken, and the group of children were mowing the grass. Watch. They are proficient in their movements, and there is no discomfort in their tone of work. It seems that they should be used to doing the work. I feel that the social development of this country is not comparable to the source world of the summer solstice. In her source world, except for some remote and poor areas, children are basically treasures in the palms of parents. Where they are willing to let them do these rough jobs, they are rural areas. The fields are basically deserted, let alone mowing. After gaining some understanding of the world, Xiaozhi did not act rashly. She still stayed on the branch, looking at the group of people from a distance. The child named De Zhuang probably was bullied by other children and left the crowd alone. In the summer solstice, the tree didn't fall, and they still looked at from a distance. The group of children probably felt that De Zhuang had never resisted. It was boring to bully, and they didn't stop him from leaving. Soon they were divided into two distinct camps, and they were separated from each other. The grass. De Zhuang walked closer and closer to the summer solstice side. Although it was still far away, with the blessing of his eyesight during the foundation building period, the child could gradually see clearly from a black spot. After seeing the big clothes, Xiaozhi's pupils couldn't help but shrink. Although De Zhuang is called De Zhuang, he is very thin, almost skinny, with tan skin, wearing grey cotton pants and gowns, and many patches on his clothes, indicating that living conditions are very bad. Seeing Weazi, Xiaozhi judged that the country's economic development was about backward. Anyway, except in the 1970s and 1980s, she saw people wearing patched clothes. After the reform and opening up, the economy developed rapidly. Basically no one would patch clothes. Not to mention the holes, they just didn't wear them a few times. Throw it away at the end of the season. Xiaozhi looked at the clothes on her body, she looked glamorous, and she looked at her skin, it was white and full of luster, all muscles were well proportioned. Although it looked thin, it was healthy. It was definitely not the same as the dry skinny of De Zhuang. At first glance, it is incompatible with the personality of this world. But at present she only saw these few children, and based on the inferences of these few people alone, it was wrong to make a hasty judgment about the world. Xiaozhi decided to hide in front of the crowd for a while, and wait until later to look around. Anyway, she already knew the direction of the village. However, she wanted to hide from people, but she didn't expect others to come here. While she was avoiding, she seized the time to sit on a tree branch and practice. Xiaozhi thought to herself, although the aura here may not be able to produce much spiritual power, but the small mosquitoes are also fleshy, it is impossible to say that she is in danger because of the lack of this spiritual power. Just when she was forgetting to practice the exercises, a few adults suddenly entered the mountain, probably because there was nothing outside, so they went a little deeper. After Xiaozhi heard the sound, he hurriedly stopped practicing to check if his figure was hidden. The clothes of these people are better than those of the kids just now. Some are wearing white shirts, some are wearing blue overalls, and some are wearing military green uniforms. Although the styles of the clothes are relatively old-fashioned in the summer solstice world, they are better than they are washed clean, and there are no patches on them. The mental outlook of these adults is much better than those of the children. At least the skin should be at least a few shades of whiter. Their temperament does not look like rural people, they have a special arrogance. In short, it is to look at people with their chins up. They look like they are exuding arrogance. Someone said, "Goose hiking, are you sure there is something to eat in the mountains?" The man known as Goose Hiking said affirmatively, "Yes, I saw some female educated youth hunting pheasants in the mountains, but some of them secretly avoided others to eat." He only heard the man who spoke first snorted, and said dissatisfied, "This group of female educated youths will not give us some pheasants when they catch them. Didn't you see that our men are dizzy because of hunger? Both are educated youths. I don't know about unity and friendship. They are too selfish. Goose Hiking, why didn't you expose their selfish behavior at the time? We are all educated youths who go to the countryside, so we should help each other in the same boat." "Yes, Goose Hiking, why didn't you say it at the time?" Others agreed and began to crusade those female educated youths who ate alone. Xiaozhi listened to the conversation of several people, and felt as if he had come to an incredible world. If this world is really what she thought, it would be too difficult for her to live here as a black house. The author has something to say. "I had a dream last night. I dreamed that I had acquired a game system. Then I went out to have fun with my husband happily every day. I don't know how many people are going to be cut in one day. I'm exhausted. After waking up, I was full of question marks. Am I so grumpy?" Xiaozhi looked at her clothes with a headache. The cotton t-shirt is not only made of fine fabrics, but also has a meticulous workmanship. There are huge English letters printed on it. As long as you are not blind, you should be able to see it. And the sandals on the feet are unique in shape, with inoperable rhinestones on them, and underneath are small high heels of 7 or 8 centimeters. These things are placed in this era, which is a proper capitalist style. Before, even if walking was uncomfortable, she didn't take off her shoes, but now, she has to consider whether she should find a place to bury her shoes and whether she should wear the clothes the other way around. It's really terrible to put these things in front of people. Fortunately, she was vigilant before and didn't rashly appear in front of the natives. Otherwise, her appearance would definitely be arrested and criticized. Xiaozhi thought this way, became more vigilant, and quickly held his breath, trying to be motionless like a statue, for fear that he would accidentally step on a branch to attract the attention of the people below, like the cannon fodder/villain of the TV series. The group of people got closer, talking while watching Liala searching for prey on the road. Suddenly someone exclaimed, "Snake! Snake! Snake!" The screaming person was so scared that he fell to the ground, holding his hands behind his back and kicking his legs, desperately trying to get away from the snake. Different from the panic of that person, when Xiaozhi heard the word snake, his mind immediately became alive, thinking, in this age of food and clothing, there is such a good thing as snake. She is different from Gu Chaoying. Gu Chaoying does not eat snake meat. In the 1970s, she still had a picky mouth. She did not eat or eat strange flowers. The summer solstice is a Chinese who can afford to eat all the species. As long as it is food, she basically has nothing to avoid. So when she heard of snakes, she suddenly remembered the various methods of snake meat and began to swallow. Sure enough, except for the person who was afraid of snakes, the other male educated youths heard that there was a snake, and they were so happy that their eyes lit up and asked excitedly, "Where?" A group of people looked around with joy at the thought of snake meat. Oops, will she be exposed to this group of foodies if this continues? Xiaozhi immediately lifted his heart and began to think about how to deal with the aftermath if he was discovered. Fortunately, they found the snake soon, but did not find the existence of the summer solstice. The group of educated youths took the sticks and smashed the stones, and the poor snake was killed before he could show his might. Yes, it's a good start. I found a snake as soon as I went out. I have meat today. We should have gone up the mountain to find food if we knew it earlier. We shouldn't listen to the alarm of the villagers. What dangers can be in this mountain? Those female educated youths can find food. We are also stupid. We are migrants after all. How can those villagers who are xenophobic see us well? That's right, don't forget. After we came to the village, those village names often rejected us. I'm afraid we abducted the girls from their villages. Hey, I don't look down on those village girls. The educated youths hit the food, as if they had won a big prize, began to make various remarks, and then happily put the snake away and continued to move forward. Soon they walked to the tree where they hid in the summer solstice. They were probably tired, and the educated youth stopped to rest under the tree. Xiaozhi felt a little anxious. Why was she so lucky that she picked the most lush tree in the neighborhood and hid it? Now it's fine. As long as other people are not blind and want to hide from the sun, they will naturally come to this tree. Under the tree, the educated youth stopped to rest and chatted again. This year's weather is also too evil, not even a drop of rain. I think the crops in the fields will not be tanned. Yes, it doesn't rain, we don't have to rest. We have to carry water every day to water the crops. My shoulders are going to be crushed. I also look forward to a heavy rain someday so that we don't have to go to work. Xiaozhi listened to their complaints, then looked at their skin color, and thought, do these people really do so much work? The skin is so white and not rough, it doesn't look like someone who has done farm work. Could it be an educated youth who just went to the countryside? Or do you just get lazy every day? She did two things attentively, and continued to listen to them with her ears upright while thinking. Oh, it doesn't rain in the heavens, there are fewer and fewer live crops in the ground, and the commune canteen is getting more and more sparse. I'm really afraid that the canteen won't be open one day. Where shall we go to eat? Commune canteen? When Xiaozhi heard this word, my heart suddenly felt bad. She traveled to the 1970s and learned about the previous history. The commune canteen system was proposed in 58 and was abolished in 61. It was not a good time at that time, and the wind of exaggeration was rampant. In response to the big jump, Yuezhen went everywhere to exaggerate the reported grain output. It happened to encounter 3 years of natural disasters. In addition to the implementation of the communal canteen system, a lot of food was wasted in the early stage, and the latter was hungry. Many people died. In the summer solstice, I looked at the weeds and trees at the foot of the mountain and combined it with the words of the commune cafeteria I heard. I suddenly understood that I should have passed through the 3-year disaster period. It is not clear which year it was, but listen. They said that the weather started to be bad this year, and it may have been worn for 59 years. The reason why she judged this is because in 58 years, although some places began to be dry, the drought was not particularly serious. The severe drought started in 59, and the canteen was first handled in 58, which was the time for wasteful waste. If you can't finish eating, you can pour it out and cook a new one at the next meal, so it's impossible for the rice to be very thin. After that, the food is almost exhausted. The cafeteria has to cook the rice more and more thinly until it can't be done. Let everyone go home and eat for themselves. She thought so, and the educated youth under the tree had already talked about other topics. I turned in the pot before, and none of our educated youths can cook anything, or do you roast the snake now? Not only their educated youth spots, but even the villagers do not have a pot at home. In response to the call for large steel making, the iron pot was handed over to the state for iron and steel making. And during this period of communism, everyone went to the cafeteria to eat a big pot of rice. Who would dare to open a small stove alone at home? The smoke from the chimney at home is just telling everyone that they are hiding something private. This behavior of digging the corner of socialism is subject to criticism. Therefore, at this time, every family is in the cold, and they have to sneak in to eat anything in private. The proposal to eat now has naturally won the approval of many people, but some people retorted, "This will not eat well, right? Isn't it a waste of time and firewood not to find a few more prey? That's right, it's only a snake, and there is no $1 or $2 in everyone's mouth. It's not enough to eat this way." Of course, some people do not agree to keep it, saying, "Don't eat it at this time. If you are seen later, you won't be able to eat it." This argument has been recognized by most people, that is, you can only count yourself when you eat it in your mouth. A group of people discussed for a long time and finally decided to roast the snake first. Once they decided to start eating, their actions became swift. There is no such thing as procrastination. Some people start to deal with snake meat, and some people start to deal with snake meat. To collect firewood, all preparations were orderly and fast. I saw the summer solstice and shook my head again and again. Now that the weather is so dry, do I want to kill a fire in the mountains? Regardless of whether they were dead or not, the fire was already lit. This group of educated youths were quite prepared. They brought the seasoning to the mountain. After a while, they roasted the snake. Smelling the scent, Xiaozhi felt his stomach also a little hungry. The snake is not big, and the meat on its body is small. A few big men share a point, and a few bites will be eaten quickly. The educated youths slapped their lips and felt that they hadn't eaten enough. They stepped on the fire and decided to go deeper into the mountains to continue looking for food. Some educated youths are relatively timid. They came back sensibly after eating snake meat and eating meat. They were a little worried about going inside and asked, "I heard that there are wild boars, tigers, and bears in the mountains. It should be dangerous to go in." "Yes, if you get caught by a beast and get hurt, the gain is not worth the loss." The more courageous educated youth, after having eaten meat, began to get up, thinking that he was amazing, and said, "What are you afraid of? When you run into a wild boar, let him see who is a beast. We are so many people, can we not beat one of them? Pig. What if you run into a herd of wild boars?" An educated youth asked weakly in the crowd. "When you run into one, kill one, and when you encounter a group, kill a group, kill them all without leaving a piece of armor. It is better to encounter a group of wild boars. If we kill a group of wild boars, it can be regarded as killing the people. Okay, don't say frustrating words. If you are scared, don't follow it. Let's go by ourselves. Let's talk about it first. If you don't enter the mountain, the meat we find won't have your share." A group of people was divided into two groups. In the end, the person with a vacillating attitude succumbed to appetite, and everyone went to a deeper place together. After they were far away, Xiaozhi decided to hide in another place. Maybe it was too close to the village. Now the drought was severe. In addition, she had stayed in the same age. Knowing that some people would go into the mountains for food, she still hid first and waited for others. Everyone fell asleep, and she quietly went down the mountain to look for other clues. After the tree was under the summer solstice, she saw that the ashes they had left before were still smoking. Now that the weather is so dry, she was worried that it would cause a mountain fire. She crushed the ashes with her feet several times and then scattered them. Checked carefully and confirmed will not go to the mountains after the resurgence. Because she was worried about encountering other people, she scanned the road with her consciousness throughout the process, and the thrilling crisis just never appeared again. The sky has gradually darkened, and after walking for most of the day, coupled with the temptation of the snake meat test just now, Xiaozhi feels that his stomach is drumming and he has to eat something. Hunting is quite simple. In the 1970s, she and Gu Chaoying often went hunting in the mountains. This would allow her to pick up her prey and get familiar with the road. She quickly caught a pheasant, dug out a nest, and found a few bird eggs. The author has something to say. The author's forums have been visited a lot these days. Yesterday, I read a post. I just wrote about the question of changing CP in the middle of the writing. The romance has changed, and the male protagonist has become a sufferer. Many people in it are scolding the author. I had a dream immediately last night. I dreamt that I changed the male lead of the romance book to another, and the female lead and the male partner were together. The problem is that the plot in the dream was not written by me. After I found out that the plot in it had changed, I was very anxious. The male partner is in that article. How can I be with the female lead? If the reader sees it, I will definitely be scolded to death. So in my dream, I desperately wanted to open the computer and change the plot. I never thought I could not get the computer. Every time I got an empty code word, someone would ask me to do something. I didn't change the plot until I woke up. Damn, this dream is the same as when I was studying in the past. I dreamed that I was going to take an exam, but I was almost late and I couldn't walk to school. Ha 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 ha. With full food, the summer solstice has a headache again. Hunting is easy, but it is not easy to make a fire. She used to be able to go up to the mountain at will. That was when she had a lighter and matches. Now she came to this world empty-handed. How can she get it on the mountain? So, is she going to drill wood to make fire or use fireball? This is a question. It would be nice if she could use what she had on hand to make fire. The problem was that she had never learned how to drill wood to make fire, and she didn't know how to make fire. She didn't have the material to make fire. I heard that she had to make some tinder to make fire. She didn't know where to get tinder. Xiaozhi thought about it for a long time, and after calculating the time and energy it would take to drill wood for fire, compared with the spiritual power that would be wasted using fireball, she decided to use fireball. I just don't know which one is more cost-effective compared with the ability gained from eating a meal. In order to eat this meal, it was very hard. She had to practice fireball. Xiaozhi began to gather strength according to the method given in the jade slip, tried several times, and after wasting some spiritual energy, finally successfully released a small fireball. She trembled with distress, threw the fireball on the pyre, and lit the fire. The pheasant and bird eggs were grilled. Although they weren't very delicious because there were no seasonings, they were so hungry that they had a nice meal during the summer solstice. After dinner, the kitchen waste and ashes were processed. The sky was completely dark. She estimated the time. By this time, the villagers should not be asleep. She has been in this age and she has experience. It's so hot in summer. Everyone should go out to enjoy the coolness and set the long gate by the way, so she can't go down the mountain yet. After practicing for a while in the summer solstice, she started to check the spells in the jade slip. She just skipped it before and put it back without checking it carefully. She felt that she should plan ahead and remember all the magical uses of the spells first, and save what happened later. Need to check now. After carefully reading the magic techniques recorded in the jade slip, Xiaozhi had to sigh wonderful. Gu Chaoying is really her good partner. For her sake, she has provided herself with many useful things. She was still worried about how to solve the Huokao problem before. This will see that there are ecstasy spells in the jade slip, which can hypnotize others, and immediately put her heart back in her stomach. However, her current cultivation level is not high enough to use a wide range of ecstasy, but it is still possible to confuse 1 or 2 mortals. After she has disguised herself, she can find a police officer to confuse her, and her household registration will naturally be captured. In fact, there are still many spells in it that can solve her daily needs, that is, her cultivation base is too low. For example, there is also a spell called Sleeve Universe, which can use spiritual power to open up a storage space on one's own body. This is a very convenient daily spell. However, Gu Chaoying's evaluation of it is chicken ribs, used to sell cute, because it takes a lot of spiritual energy to maintain such a space, and the person who can use it out of his sleeves must have a high level of cultivation. In addition, the size of the space opened up is related to the level of cultivation. Some people have poor control over spiritual power, and the space opened up is not as good as an ordinary storage bag. In the end, do people with a high level of cultivation lack 1 or 2 storage tools? No shortage, so they don't need to use this spell at all. The jade slip also records another very big shortcoming of this spell. Once the spiritual power of the person used is exhausted, everything placed in the sleeves will explode. It is simply a weapon for sending equipment to other people, as long as it is people with normal minds would not choose to put important things in their sleeves. The world of comprehension is full of crises. Who can guarantee that the spiritual power reserves in one's body are always full? So this spell is also used to sell cute emergency use. Xiaozhi looked at the records in the jade slip, remembered the past, and gained a deeper understanding of Gu Chaoying's evaluation. She now finally knows why this skill was available in the 1970s. Gu Chaoying also had cultivation skills, but she still chose to rub. Her space is gone. It turns out that the universe function in this sleeve is too tasteless. Thinking about it this way, she didn't really want to learn this skill anymore, it felt useless. There are also many spells recorded in the jade slip that are very powerful, but due to the limitation of their own cultivation base, the summer solstice cannot be used for a long time. After reading the spells in the jade slip, I didn't have time to study the other content for the time being, and I knew it for the time being. After the summer solstice, the jade slip was collected and started to prepare for the downhill. Afraid of encountering unexpected situations in the village, she carefully turned the t-shirt on her back so that no one would find the English letters on her clothes anyway. When she reached the foot of the mountain, she pulled out some miscanthus and started weaving straw sandals, preparing to change them into sandals, so that when she came down the mountain, she would not cause trouble because of high-heeled shoes. While Xiaozhi was knitting straw sandals, he was grateful to Gu Chaoying in his heart. Although this guy was unreliable, sometimes what she did helped herself a lot. She traveled through the 70s before. Because there is space, it is very convenient to contain many modern purchased items. All daily life uses space. Apart from cooking and some agricultural knowledge, she basically has no other life skills. Waste. The skill of weaving straw sandals was taught to her by Gu Chaoying. At that time, they were not weaving straw sandals to wear, but they were bored when they went hunting in the mountains. Gu Chaoying laughed at her as a traverser in the chat. In order to show that she has a lot of skills, she weaved straw sandals to show her. Later, regardless of her wishes, she forced to teach her this skill, but she learned it reluctantly. At the time of the summer solstice, I didn't know that I would cross again. I didn't expect that the compulsory skills learned at the time would actually be used here. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little embarrassed in her heart. Sure enough, people who have no long-term worries must have near worries, and there is nothing to learn more. Skills are still good. She is now very grateful to Gu Chaoying for teaching herself many inexplicable skills. She also taught herself how to use plants to dye fabrics. If there is time, she can collect materials by herself to recolor the t-shirts and cover the letters on the summer solstice. Past. It's just that she has just crossed over, and the time is a bit too late to dye herself, so she will first see if she can get clothes and wear them in other ways. I thought about a lot of things in my mind, and the straw sandals were made up. In the summer solstice, I took off the sandals and put on the sandals, and then carried the heels of the sandals, and started to have a headache how to deal with these shoes. Throw it away, she reluctantly. These shoes are genuine calfskin sandals. She bought them at the counter for $1,000, this price can be considered more expensive in later generations, let alone a pair of styles at this time. Such beautiful calfskin shoes can be sold for about 10 or 20 yuan. It is that the rhinestones and high heels above are a bit cheating, and the style is too exaggerated compared to now. In the 1960s, the requirements for wearing clothes became stricter. It was an era when no one could wear dresses. The braggy passed down from the Soviet Union was considered to be corrective. Shi'u orthodoxism was what China called the Soviet Union in the debate. At that time, the relationship between the two countries was a bit disharmonious, so everything that came in from there was not usable. The suits introduced from the West are capitalism, and the cheongsam is considered to be a feudal remnant. In this era, if the clothes are slightly more fancy, they will be labeled as fancy outfits. In the era of criticism, only jifang suits, youth suits, tunic suits, and cardigans are the right ones. At this time, there are three popular clothes colors: jifang green, worker blue, and zhongshan ash. Everyone needs to be very careful in their daily wear. Those good-looking clothes must be hidden under the bottom of the box, otherwise they will be caught and criticized if they are not careful. Even if Xiaoji wants to sell these shoes, I don't know if I can find a buyer. As for keeping it for herself, it is impossible. She knows the madness of this era and will never leave her a handle. Because of hesitation, she didn't decide whether to throw it away or sell it. So she found a place and made a nest to confirm that it would not get wet in the rain, put her high heels in, and did a little bit of it. Cover up, make sure that no one will be found before clap your hands and walk down the mountain. There is no light pollution at this time, and the countryside has not been powered on. Today should not be the middle of the month, so even if the weather is good, there is no cloud and there is no moon, and the road is dark everywhere. The summer solstice sneaked into the village amidst the sounds of insects and cicadas. At this time, the villagers had already gone home and had basically rested, but there were still a few houses who didn't know what they were doing, and the lights were still on. The kerosene lamp was about to be lit, and the dim light came out through the cracks in the window. She was curious for a while, so she approached one of the windows and listened quietly to the corner. She was lucky and caught gossip as soon as she came. I only heard a woman crying and whispering. Maybe it was because she was afraid of disturbing others and didn't dare to cry too loudly. There was a man beside her sighing. The woman kept crying, the man didn't speak, just made a clicking sound, and didn't know what it was. After a while, the man let out a long sigh of relief, then there was another knocking sound, and then the man started to chuckle things again. The woman cried for a while, but the man didn't respond, so he put away the crying, and said with a low voice, "My boss, why don't you talk and smoke all the time? Do you also listen to the nonsense of people outside and think I look down on you? No? Willing to marry you?" Xiaoji didn't expect to find a corner randomly, and he heard the gossip content firsthand. She has been with Gu Chaoying for a long time. She has long been a senior melon-eating crowd. Now she is hitting the gossip scene, and she can't move her feet immediately. She wants to know the follow-up crazily, so she found a place in the corner that is not easy to be found. Nestled and began to eat melon. The author has something to say. Tell you a joke. Yesterday, when I was cooking rice, my husband went to stir fry. He pulled out the rice cooker before the rice was cooked. As a result, it took too long for him to cook. The rice in the pot absorbed all the water and soaked. It's very big. I don't know why the rice is so absorbent. No matter how I add water and recook, I can't cook the rice, because the rice will absorb all the water added later, causing the rice cooker to fail to cook normally. In the end, I didn't. The only way is to take another pot and paste the rice like Korean fried rice. Today my husband asked me to cook again, and I said, I have a psychological shadow of cooking. My husband said that it's fine to cook normally, and he won't unplug my wire today. So I secretly took down a meal of rice with his back. Usually 2 meals are cooked together. I am afraid that the rice will be wasted if it is cooked. I think I need to try to cook it once and then say it again, so that I can rebuild my self-confidence, but I dare not tell him for fear of being scolded. Ha ha ha, I think this idea is too stupid. Damn, I was caught up yesterday. Now I feel so scared when I hear cooking. When I hear the sound of the rice cooker jumping, I dare not go to see if the rice is cooked. That rice is so weird. The source of the spring is on a very high mountain. The mountain is straight and almost at a right angle of 90 degrees to the ground. The mountain wall is still an arc, and it seems that it is not formed naturally when it is recessed. I took a look at the summer solstice and found that this mountain was probably blown up. After the explosion, there was a water outlet halfway up the mountain. The water outlet was quite large. The water poured down like a waterfall, and the strong hydraulic power smashed out from the bottom. A pit was formed, and the water finally converged in the pit to form a mountain spring. I don't know what those people are doing to blow up the mountain, but it's none of her business. She has to take a shower now. Although it will be 3 shifts in the middle of the night, and almost no one will go up the mountain, but the summer solstice is still very careful not to take off his clothes. Gu Chaoying once complained that her protagonist's halo was not reliable at all. As the protagonist, she would be photographed by satellites while using space, and then taken to the laboratory for slices. She doesn't know if she still has the protagonist's halo after passing through, but she doesn't want to be caught for experimentation at all. No matter it was after entering the water, attracting male protagonists or other cannon fodder was not what she wanted, so she went into the water directly wearing clothes, rubbed her body, and then washed all the clothes on her body, and then went ashore. After learning the fireball technique, she has learned to use spiritual power to control the temperature, so she took a little effort to dry the clothes directly. After taking a shower, there is still a long time before dawn. Today, I wasted a lot of spiritual energy. I didn't dare to waste time sleeping during the summer solstice. I simply used meditation instead of sleep. She continued to practice until dawn, and the summer solstice ended work and began to prepare breakfast. She grabbed some wild vegetables, caught a pheasant, and then started to make breakfast. Because she got wild vegetables today, she found a stone slab for cooking. In the summer solstice, I used a stone to build a simple earthen stove. I suddenly remembered that I had made a mistake yesterday. I didn't even think about changing a box of matches with someone. I could only pat my pig's head and lightly fire a fireball. She first shredded the pheasant and blanched it on a slate to get the oil, then put in wild vegetables and started to fry the greens on the slate. Today's breakfast was delicious with meat and vegetables. After eating, she went to the small waterfall to pick up a few handfuls of water to rinse her mouth and drink a little to quench her thirst. After solving the problem of the 5 internal organs, Xiaozhi began to think about what to do next. The first is the issue of hyokao. Should she get a city hyokao? Urban hyokao feels taller. But although the urban household registration is good, it also brings a lot of trouble. The premise is that she must have a house in the city to settle down. She is a foreigner and doesn't have any money. If you get a city household registration, you have to make money first. Enough money to buy a house. After getting the urban household registration, how to solve her daily life? She does not have a diploma, and there is a high probability that she will not find a good job in the city. Of course, you can go to take the exam for a diploma, but this is also a lot of trouble. If you find a job in the city, do you go to the assembly line of the factory every day? If she has a city residence, a house, and a decent job, it will be even more troublesome. In this era, single women are in such good conditions. I don't know how many people are staring at them. Maybe someone will rush to give them every day. She introduces the object. Thinking about this, she might as well take root in the countryside. At least the house is not as difficult to build in the city, and if she wants to make money, she will have work points when she goes to the land, and when she improves her life, she can go up the mountain at any time. If she lives in the city, she wants to open a business, but it's not that easy. The price on the black market is expensive, and the wages of the factory may not be affordable. Do you sneak up the mountain every night? The most important thing is that now there are educated youth going to the mountains and the countryside. Even if she obtains her hyokao, will she be taken back to the countryside in the city? Although I am a cultivator, I can use ecstasy with spiritual power, but I use ecstasy every time I have a problem, and I don't know how much spiritual power will be wasted. It's too extravagant. Xia Solstice thought about it and decided to take root in this village. Anyway, she has seen the country background, and it is similar to her reality, and it is similar to the previous 70s. She can probably infer the follow-up development. After 79 years of policy reforms, as a veteran traverser, she can build a business empire again with the perspective of later generations. This has been done once, and the second time will definitely be no problem. After making up his mind, Xiaozhi settled down and began to take out the jade slip to check the content that had been skipped before. Yesterday, just reading the spells article gave her a lot of inspiration. Maybe other content can also bring more beneficial convenience to her survival. With this in mind, she read the talisman chapter. The talisman and the magic are actually similar, that is, the magic is compressed and sealed in a carrier. Based on the carrier's support from the magic spell maintained by the caster's own spiritual power, depending on the carrier's grade, the effectiveness of the talisman may be stronger than the spell cast out of thin air, and the duration is longer than the spell cast simply. Of course, the benefits are more than this. The talisman has a sealing effect, which can seal the spiritual power in the body on the talisman paper. When the spiritual power in the body is exhausted, it can absorb more spiritual power, so the talisman is equivalent to increasing the endurance of the monk. This thing is just like a storage battery. It is convenient and easy to use in the realm of spiritual cultivation. There is so much time to meditate and absorb the power every day. The body of the monk may not be able to store so much spiritual power. They can absorb spiritual power at the same time. While sealing up the spiritual power, and then continuing to absorb it, cultivation is the same as the production reserve. The problem is that Xia Solstice is now using a spell or making a piece of talisman to consume spiritual power. I don't know how long it will take to practice to be fully charged, so she does not have the conditions to make a battery. Besides, even if she really wants to draw talisman, how can she get the materials for making talisman paper and talisman pen? There is no ready-made talisman paper and talisman pen in this world. If she wants to draw charms, she must first make the materials by herself. There are tutorials for making these things in the jade slips, but they are very troublesome and cumbersome. Summer Solstice didn't want to do it, but after seeing the invisibility spell made into invisibility talisman, after comparing the spiritual power required to maintain the same invisibility time, she felt that she should work hard to make talisman paper and talisman pen. Because invisibility talisman is better than invisibility, the technique is much more cost-effective. As long as the spiritual power sealed in a piece of talisman is not exhausted, it can be used multiple times. If she simply releases the invisibility technique, in addition to continuing to release the spiritual power, once it is released, it will be used next time. Re-release a new spell, which is far less convenient than the invisibility talisman. Because he decided to make his own talisman paper and talisman pen, Xiaozhi began to carefully review the tutorial. Gu Chaoying knows that her original world doesn't have much aura, so in the tutorial of making talisman paper and talisman pen in the jade slip, it provides some common materials that can be found in the ordinary world. The steps of making talisman paper are more troublesome, but the materials are not difficult to collect. As for the talisman pen and cinnabar, if you can't find the materials, you can consider using her own blood instead. Xiaozhi thought she didn't plan to draw too many symbols, she just had to bite her finger and let out some blood. After making a decision, she did what she said, and started looking for materials for making talisman paper. In the realm of comprehension, the materials for making talisman paper are all plants and animals that have been cultivated by aura. There is no aura in this world. In the summer solstice, according to the tutorial, I searched for some older trees and picked up some skins and leaves. After an older animal is killed, the fur is removed for use. It takes a few days to make a batch of talisman paper. Xiaozhi thinks that he is busy, so it is better to dye his clothes too, so as to save the English letters on them from making themselves awkward. But she still needs to find a place to live for herself. She can't meditate in a tree every day. She is not a little dragon girl, so she can sleep on a rope every day. In the summer solstice, I found Kuishi as a pickaxe and dug a cave near the waterfall. I went to have lunch when I was hungry, and then continued to dig the cave. After digging, she had to sigh that the strength of the monk's body was really high, except for some sweat, she didn't feel tired at all. After digging the cave, she lit a fire and began to bake the wall. While waiting for the wall to dry, she moved some messy things and put them at the entrance of the cave to cover up a little to make sure that no one would find a hole here. And then began to paint with peace of mind during the summer solstice. The simplest pigment is grey, which can be dyed with plant ash and silt. This is the oldest method of dyeing cloth. Many rural elderly people use this soil method to dye cloth. Spread the silt that has settled for many years on a cotton cloth, and then put it in a cool place for 2 days. After it is air-dried, take it out and wash it. The white cotton cloth will turn grayish-brown. Although the color dyed by this method is not good looking, it will corrode the fabric and reduce the service life of the clothes, but now the summer solstice has no choice, even if she can use petals or something to adjust the beautiful color, she can't wear it out, so she just uses it. This native method. She dug a lot of silt under the spring and moved it back to the cave, covered the entrance of the cave, and started dyeing cloth. The normal process requires air drying for 2 days to wipe the silt, but in the summer solstice, you can't be naked for 2 days, so she casts a spell to directly control the temperature, instantly dries the silt and shakes it off, then puts on the clothes and goes to the mountain spring to wash the clothes. This kind of laundry really hurts. Xiaozhi felt that she had to speed up and confirm her identity, and then she went to find someone to buy cloth or a new set of clothes. She was going crazy wearing this set of clothes every day. After finishing the clothes, she inspected the cave again and found that it was almost baked and could live in, and she could finally take a breath. Today is the whole day, she is the reincarnation of Lord Bei. Where is the life of a traverser? It is simply a wilderness survival. I don't know what world Gu Chaoying has experienced before, why there are so many messy things. Teach her. The author has something to say. I found that when I started to think about the plot seriously, my mind was very active and I often dreamed. I had a dream a few days ago, and I told Jiyu that she commented that this dream has a particularly cinematic quality. The technology of the real world in the dream has been developed to extract human brain waves. At the beginning, the dream was from the perspective of God. The plot is that a person was murdered. This technology happened to be used. The police extracted the brain waves of the deceased and knew who the murderer was from his brain waves. Then the picture changed and I became a character in my dream. The technology for extracting brain waves is becoming more and more advanced, and reality has developed into a second world. As long as people die, brain waves will be placed in the second world to continue to survive, but these memories before life must be cleared. In my dream, I live in the second world. I am a poor man and I don't have my own separate house. I share a rent with others. I kept a cat, but the cat was stolen. I kept looking for the cat, but I couldn't find it. One day when I was going home, a fierce-looking man suddenly came to me at the door of my house. He was so frightened that he ran back and closed the door. As a result, the fierce man didn't know why the police were called, and the police scolded me. I have no memory, but there are still some living habits that seem to be carved in my bones and have not disappeared, so although I don't know why, I still think the world is strange, so I hide at home and dare not go out. The shared house is very small. Except for the door, there is only one window. The fierce man has been lying on the window and laughing in a gloomy way. I am even more afraid. A strange woman came behind, she also smirked on the window. I was always scared and didn't know what to do, but she suddenly opened the door and came in and said, "The advertisement on the window has changed. It looks pretty good." At this time, I suddenly had a lot of memories in my mind. This woman is a woman who rents with me, and the utilization rate of various things in the second world is very high. Those windows are all advertisements from the outside, but from the inside, you can see that it's transparent, so it's the kind of thing that happened before when someone was lying on the window, because they were looking at the advertisement on the window. This second world really makes the most of the space, and the windows are all used for advertising. After knowing these things, I became less scared, and remembered that my cat was lost, but I couldn't find it, so I was going to buy a new cat. When this idea came into my mind, I suddenly had another memory in my mind, and that was the information of the cat seller. I followed the information in my mind to find the cat seller. I went outside the cat seller's house. She was playing with a dog. I asked her, "Are there any cats for sale?" She said, "Yes, cats cost 15 yuan per catty." I thought her statement was very strange, so I asked her, "How come it is sold by the catty?" She said, "Cat meat is at this price." I suddenly became angry and said, "I'm here to buy a cat, not to kill a cat. Are you abused cats?" I don't know how this thought of abuse of cats appeared in my mind. When the person heard me say this, his face suddenly changed. He was so fierce, he rushed to kill me, and I was chased by her. I ran into an alley and there were a lot of bugs in it. Because I saw a new species, a new memory was entered in my mind. The content of the memory told me that these bugs will invade the human world and need to be dealt with by the army. So I wanted to ask someone in the army for help. At this time, another memory suddenly appeared in my mind. I had a boyfriend in the second world. He was a soldier. I made a decisive decision and decided to find that soldier. Boyfriend. As a result, I followed my memory and found the boyfriend of the soldier. He saw me and said to take me to meet a friend, and then the three of us went to eat hot pot, grass, bugs, and even chased after the abused cat. I forgot about the killing. Finally, after eating hot pot, I woke up and the whole play ended. After spitting out my entire trip today, Xia Solstice is about to start making talisman paper. Before the ingredients were soaked in the sink, but as soon as the ingredients were soaked, she was stumped by the next steps because there was no pot to boil. Do you have to make a pottery pot to cook the ingredients yourself? This is too cheating. She is really about to become a professional decathlon craftsman. She has to cook a lot of ingredients. I don't know if the villagers under the mountain have such a big pot at home. Xiaoji is wondering if she wants to borrow a pot from them tonight. But that's what she thinks about. Now everyone should have some small clay pots for boiling water in the house. There are probably no big pots left. After making up for it for a while, Xiaoji decided to use her identity as a monk to solve the problem. After all, she was reluctant to let her children not catch wolves. She didn't want to be a savage on the mountain all the time. She made an invisibility talisman early to get into the crowd to find out news. Resigned to her fate, she found some soil and began to knead the pot and dry it, then filled it with water and put it in the previously soaked fodder, and began to boil the materials for making talisman paper. Sure enough, after using the spell, all the next steps went smoothly. Soon the fodder and everything were processed, and the animal skin glue was also boiled smoothly. Then she mixed all the ingredients together and started to beat them. Punching is not only an important process for making ordinary paper, but also a very critical process for making talisman paper. Before, she used ordinary blisters when she soaked forage. In the realm of cultivation, she used Lingchuan water for soaking forage. Since this step is omitted, you must pay extra attention to the fodder. When making the talisman paper, the monks need to inject spiritual power, and the spiritual power and the material are beaten into a paste. In this process, the fibers in the plant pulp will be divided into silk and broomed, and fused with the animal skin glue. Together, in the end, the material and spiritual power are woven into paper rich in tenacity, and the paper produced in this way is the orthodox talisman paper. One of the production processes of talisman paper is not the same as when making ordinary paper. Ordinary paper can be made into a large sheet and then cut at will, but making talisman paper is different. If time or energy permits, it is necessary to split the size in advance during the production process as much as possible. Do not wait for the complete shape to be cut, otherwise, some of the spiritual power enclosed in it will be lost, and the grade of the talisman will not be so good. Some local tyrants who are stupid and in a hurry may not worry about the wastage. There are also merchants who specialize in selling talisman paper. They will not care about them for profit. They usually choose batch production and then cut, which saves time and effort. But Xia Solstice is now a soft-shelled turtle, so she has to save everything, so she must make the best rune paper at the least cost, and start cutting the size at the same time as the material, and she is almost exhausted. After a night of hard work, Xia Ji finally succeeded in making a stack of talisman papers. Because her cultivation level is not high, and her craftsmanship is unfamiliar and inexperienced, she made low-grade talisman papers. This grade is compared with jade slips. The conclusion drawn from the data. The successfully made talisman paper is very magical. It is not yellow, but exudes a luster like jade. It will not get wet when placed in water, just like some waterproof material is made on it. Regardless of the grade and appearance of the talisman made, she will feel full of accomplishment in her heart. Her deceptively broken protagonist halo finally became powerful, and it was not easy for her to make herself successful once. Then the summer solstice will begin to draw symbols. If the invisibility technique is a relatively advanced technique, there are a lot of abilities required to maintain invisibility. If you are not careful, it will easily expose the spell to everyone and be treated as a monster or an enemy. She has used invisibility to go to the village earlier. It's swaying. Where is it necessary to make talisman paper so hard? It was the first time to draw talisman. Xiaoji had just experienced the success of making paper by herself. She was full of expectations for her protagonist's halo and started to draw talisman with confidence. Failure. Summer solstice. It seems that the protagonist halo is temporarily on strike. Fortunately, there are a lot of talisman papers she made this time. Don't be afraid, just make them casually. The summer solstice tried a few more times, but failed. She almost ran away, feeling that she would lose too much blood if she didn't succeed. Fortunately, after several mistakes, she finally succeeded in drawing an invisibility talisman. Seeing the stream of light on the talisman paper, the summer solstice cried with joy, and finally the savage life can be ended. She has been alone in the mountains for the past 2 days, almost not crazy, but she doesn't know why someone likes to survive in the wilderness. People who have not experienced survival in the wilderness will not understand it. This kind of life is simply not too tormenting. After Xiaoji successfully drew an invisibility talisman, I was afraid that unexpected circumstances would need to be supplemented, so I drew another one. This time I was lucky and the second talisman was successful. After drawing the 2 charms, she tidied up everything she was going to bring on her body, put it beside her, and made preparations for going down the mountain in advance. But there is one more thing that must be done before going down the mountain, and that is to practice first, because her spiritual power has been exhausted. These 2 days were too extravagant, using spells to do all kinds of things, and successfully wiped out all of his spiritual power. After finishing the summer solstice, I hurriedly began to practice cross-legged. I took this opportunity to try to see if those novels would appear. Once the protagonist has exhausted his whole spiritual power before practicing, the spiritual energy will be absorbed faster, like a whale swallowing. This kind of plot madly ran into one's own body. Facts have proved that those novels are all made up. After a few hours of practicing, she found that the speed of absorbing aura is as slow as the old woman's walking. Of course, this may be because her protagonist's halo has gone on strike again. The summer solstice was a little disappointed, and a trace of spiritual energy was condensed in a few hours of luck. The spiritual energy in this world is really too little. She sighed, then gathered her strength for a meal and then went down the mountain. Anyway, there is still a lot of time behind. She can take her time. The meridians should not shrink so fast. As long as she doesn't use her spiritual power, she just needs to practice well. After eating, Xia Solstice walked out of the cave and looked at the sky. The sky was already dark. At this time everyone should have gone to work and eat. She can go around the village to see what wall roots can listen to. Xiaozhi did not immediately use the invisibility talisman. Instead, she walked slowly down the mountain. When she reached the foot of the mountain, when people started to smoke, she stuck the talisman paper and disappeared instantly. When she arrived in the village, the villagers had finished their meal and gathered in 2s and 3s in the big drying field to enjoy the cool. By the way, the Longmen formation was very noisy. Xiaozhi stood by and listened to what they said. After listening to it for a while, I knew who the captain was. The captain looked like he was 50 or 60 years old. He was black and thin, with no flesh on his face, so his wrinkles were a bit deep. This age was guessed by Xiaozhi. It does not rule out that his age is not that old. It may also be because he participates in labor, so people age faster, so his appearance looks very old. After all, in this age, there is a lack of food and clothing, no fat on the body, no support for the skin, and exposure to the sun every day. Participating in high-intensity labor, it is normal to look older than the actual age. Just when everyone was chatting happily, someone suddenly rushed over from a distance and shouted, "The father of Shui Lao San's family just fell, and his head hit a stone. This will faint and I can't wake up. Erzhuzi, hurry up, drive the bullock cart over and send the child to the hospital. Come on, I'll set up a bullock cart right away." As soon as something happened, the young man named Erzhuzi didn't dare to delay, and hurried to the bullpen. The caller urged behind him, "I fell at the door of Shui Lao San's house. I don't know what went wrong with the fall. No one dares to move him now, so just drive the bullock cart over there." "Got it." Erzhuzi answered as he ran, and soon disappeared. Xiaozhi looked at the panicked crowd and thought, the name De Zhuang is so familiar, was it the kid that day? At this time, people have no culture, and the names are rustic, plus the culture is not high, everyone's names are the same, and they often have the same name. She is not sure if it is the child, so she simply follows the guy who came over to shout, "And it's here." The place saw a young woman holding a little boy crying. The woman cried and said, "Come on and someone can help. De Zhuang, wake up, if you have a long and two shortcomings, how can I live?" She was crying so much that she looked sad, tears pouring out without money, and a man next to her said in a painful voice, "Don't worry, the bullock cart will be here soon." The cry and the male voice were familiar. Although she didn't recognize her face, she recognized her voice. Xiaozhi never thought that she was so lucky. She caught up to the cord as soon as she came and bumped her head. De Zhuang is the kid she saw being bullied on the mountain before. This crying woman is his stepmother, and the man who is comforting his stepmother next to him is Dezhuang, his father. She stood on the scene and watched for a while, and the second pillar over there quickly drove the bullock cart over and said, "Quickly, put the kids up, and I'll take you to the hospital." So a group of people hurriedly put the children in the bullock cart. The young woman got into the cart with an older man, and Urzhuzi hurriedly drove the bullock cart into motion. The enthusiastic onlookers next to him chased the back of Urzhuzi and told, "Watch the road, don't bump, and don't know if Dezhuang has broken his head. Don't turn his brain into a brainstorm." Urzhuzi responded, "Don't worry, I know." Then he drove the cow away steadily. After the other people helped send the child away, there was nothing to do, and they began to gather and talk. The newly married woman Shui Lao San looks like a good one. She really treats the child as her own, and her sad look is not fake. The author has something to say, "By the way, you see that some words have become spoken, why didn't you tell me? I didn't have anything to do yesterday, and I just clicked on my own article and glanced at it casually. I went, so many spoken words." The people next to me all saw the woman crying with his own eyes. It was really sad that the listener looked at the tears, and all nodded in agreement. "No, it seems that we all wanted to go wrong before. She is really good, but the children of the third family are a little bit ignorant. Do you know how Dezhuang just fell?" An aunt said with a hint of gossip on her face. "How did you fall?" Most of the other people were just enjoying the cool on the drying market, but they didn't know what was going on here. When they heard the inside story, they all leaned in curiosity. The third family member said that Dezhuang picked up cow dung today and his body was a bit dirty. He wanted to help him take a bath for fear that he would not be able to wash himself. He didn't expect that not only did he not appreciate him, but he also stretched out his hand to push her, but he tried too hard. Instead of pushing anyone, he knocked himself down, and then hit the stone. The aunt said that the expression on her face suddenly became mysterious, and she whispered, "If you want me to say, this person just can't do bad things." Although the third child has been married recently, it is true to a few children. Okay, for the food to be dressed, the girl's hair is neatly combed, and the clothes are clean, but it's much better than when she didn't have a mother before. As a result, the girl who is not mature enough to raise her, I don't know why he is so angry, I have seen him overthrow the third house several times. The old lady said with feelings, the third child is also a good-tempered person. I have never blamed Dezhuang. You see, this is not a god, and Dezhuang will not be retributed. I asked my head if I licked my head. As soon as she said retribution, the others booed immediately. Bah, bat, there is no retribution. This is a feudal superstition. Now the country is sweeping all the monsters, ghosts, monsters, and the second egg family. You can't say that anymore, if someone hears it. To be sent to criticize and fight. When someone said that, the aunt from the Erden family immediately reduced her expression and said, I just talked casually. I accidentally scooped my mouth and said something wrong, but I didn't dare to engage in feudal superstitions. Ba ba ba, ba. My mouth? Nonsense, it's time to fight. As she said, she reached out and patted her lips gently. Being interrupted in this way, they quickly changed the subject and talked about other things. After Xiaozhi heard the aunt's retelling of the incident, and listened to her comment on the child, she suddenly raised her eyebrows, feeling a little strange in her heart. Although she had just come to this world and hadn't had much contact with these indigenous people, based on her observation that day, she felt that the child was not that kind of person. If this Dezhuang was really so rebellious, he was laughed at by other children that day, how could he not take any revenge, but left silently and continued to mow the grass by himself? How easy is it to be a trap in the mountains? How could this kind of good opportunity be let go? Of course, it is also possible that he was young and scheming, knowing that he could not retaliate at the time. otherwise he would be discovered. But in this way, what the auntie said to the stepmother would be a little bit unreasonable. If De Zhuang is really a thoughtful person, he should get along with the stepmother face to face instead of doing it directly. The reason why Xiaozhi felt that the stepmother was weird was not that he agreed with the kids pushing people. He was indeed a little wrong in pushing people, but he was still young and didn't hide his thoughts. Maybe it was just expressing his dislike of the stepmother. Too extreme. But at any time, whether it was in the past, in the present or in the future generations, a child knows that he has a stepmother, no one can guarantee that he will be calm. At the beginning, he will always be a little repulsive. Maybe the stepmother wanted to keep her and the child too close. When the child was not ready to accept the identity of the stepmother, he was too diligent to please him. It made him feel a sense of crisis and felt that the other party had bad intentions, which led to him behave outrageously. Xiaozhi remembered listening to the corner that day when the stepmother said that she steamed a custard for De Zhuang. This was when the People's Commune canteen was still in operation, and the grain had to be handed over to the canteen for unified management. How could she be so bold in steaming custard? Where do the eggs come from? Where is it steamed? Has anyone found it? She acted really boldly. When she heard about these things that night at the summer solstice, she didn't think of the special system at this time, so she didn't react, so she didn't feel strange, but now that I think about it, the problem is big. De Zhuang is already earning centimeters, and he should be a sensible age. He understands the environment around him. A stepmother who just married and is suddenly very attentive. If he gives him a bowl of egg custard at this sensitive time, maybe he will be conspiracy theories. Wondering if the stepmother was waiting for him to drink, and then reported that he was digging the corner of socialism and dragged him to criticize and fight or something. Don't forget, this is a terrible era. The fratricidal relationship between father and son is nothing new, let alone a stepmother. The reason for wanting to harm yourself is simply too good. If you don't pay attention, you will be fatal, so he acts cautiously. That's right. Thinking about the strange behavior of that woman again today, it feels really wrong. Xia Solstice remembers that night a woman advised her husband to smoke less, saying that there was nicotine in the cigarette, but it didn't sound like an indigenous person. At this time, where did the old indigenous peasants know where to go for nicotine? Could it be that what kind of traverser is she? Xia Solstice can't help but have a big brain. Only people from later generations are so particular about it. Now there is no entertainment and no snacks to relieve greed. It is not normal for a man to smoke a dry cigarette or something. But this didn't have much to do with her. Who is not a traverser yet, this is nothing unusual, anyway, she can do her own thing. Xiaozhi quickly put aside the doubt in her heart and continued to eavesdrop. These days, there is no TV, no mobile phone, and no internet. Everyone has nothing to do. It is rare that a major event happened. It quickly spread to everyone. Almost everyone in the village knew that Shui Laosan's unreasonable troubles resulted in knocking their heads. Broke in. The streets and alleys are all talking about this. Some people who stand up and speak can't hurt their backs, and their attitudes are superior and unfilial, and the stepmother is also a mother, so how can you do something to your elders? Some conspiracy theories think that maybe the stepmother did something and caused the child to irritate him. Everyone is pointing to the situation, but in the end there is a problem, that is, whether the big Zhuang will fall into a big problem. Bring it on! Our village of 10 miles and 8 townships does not even have a doctor, and there is only one health center in the town. Usually, we can only get through it by ourselves. This will make you fall so badly. I don't know if the doctors in the health center can't be cured. After all, they are all in the same village. Even if you can't understand anyone, once the heavy topic of birth, old age, sickness, and death is involved, everyone is still relatively kind and doesn't want to see a life pass away. What can we do even if it can't be treated? These are fate. I can only blame him for his bad life. He was born in this ravine and his mother died early. Oh, I'm afraid that he will be saved and he will be stupid as a result. How can I live in the future? Yes, it's impossible for Shui Lao San to send his mother-in-law home for him. When he comes back, he has to ask for a living under the hands of his stepmother. In case he is stupid, it will be difficult today. There is no dutiful son in front of the bed for a long time. If he can't take care of himself in the future, who will wait for him patiently? Every family has scriptures that are difficult to recite, and everyone is helpless after the sorrow. Everyone is living hard, and can only hope that he will be lucky and come back safely. The villagers talked about Shui Lao San's family, but somehow the topic extended to another family. Xia Solstice was originally a gossip listening, and she didn't care much. Unexpectedly, the more she listened, the more she felt that this family was a gauge of an opportunity for her. A move in her heart felt that she had found a good way to integrate into the village. During the chatting of the villagers during the summer solstice, they learned that there was a family in this village more than 10 years ago, and the situation was similar to that of Shui Lao San. The man's wife fell ill and died early, leaving him with a 5-year-old child. Because he was a daughter, he married a new wife. That wife, like a big stepmother, was very kind to the child when she got married. Unfortunately, the child didn't appreciate her and once pushed her stepmother to the ground. At that time, the stepmother was pregnant and had a miscarriage. The man was very angry and beat the child at that time. Emil. After beating the child, he might not be relieved. A few days later, he suddenly took the child out of the house. After returning, he did not bring the child. His explanation was that the child was placed in foster care by a distant relative and waited until he was sensible. Pick it up. Although he said so, the villagers are speculating that he might sell or lose the child, because their family was born and raised in the village, and they have not heard of any distant relatives, but the wife in front of him is also in the neighboring village. Where can he go? If he dared to throw the baby girl back to his wife's natal family because of the woman he married later, they would have come to the door long ago. However, no one is so ignorant to carefully consider other people's homes. Anyway, a girl's film is worthless, and her own is not favored, and there is no time to care about other people's homes. The man had sent away the child, thinking that he could have another wife with his wife, and live with the beauty of the family. He didn't expect it to be unpredictable. One day he went into the mountains to hunt, but the day when the blind bear lost his life and the corpse was brought back. After wiping a few tears, the wife packed up her things and went back to her natal home, and never showed up again. He was the only child in the family, and died young in misfortune. His parents couldn't bear the blow, and he passed away one after another after handling the funeral of his son. And the last root of their family, the little girl never appeared again. The villagers still don't know where she was sent, or whether she is alive or dead. Today, there was an incident of Dezhuang pushing his stepmother. How similar it was to the previous incident, they were so emotional. Xiaozhi felt that the identity of this little girl was tailor-made for herself. The author has something to say. Look at the time, the end of the month is up. Robbery, hand over the white liquid in your hands. It has been more than 10 years since she left the village. No one knows what she looked like, and all the family members are dead. They have been dead for many years. Everyone's memory of their appearance should be blurred. This identity is simply tailored for the summer solstice. She is full of confidence in posing as the girl, and she is not worried about her appearance. Even if she does not look like that family member, as long as the villagers accept the assumption that she is that girl, they will naturally begin to revise their memories, and slowly begin to recall her parents based on her appearance, and then feel that she looks like that family. The memory of the human brain is the most unreliable thing. With the passage of time, the constant emphasis of outsiders is very easy to be affected. As for age, it is not a problem. When she was watching villagers gossiping before, she saw many people who were younger than her, who were much older than her. Although Xiaozhi had just graduated from university and her actual age was older than that of the girl, the people of later generations grew older than the people of this period because of their improved living standards. In addition, after completing their own cultivation, they became younger and forced to pretend to be 17 or 18. There is no problem at all. The only downside to occupying that girl's identity is that she might have been caught by someone after she came back. She attacked her stepmother and caused a miscarriage. She felt that she was young and cautious and cruel. Now that she has grown up, she must be very serious. It can be troublesome to change other people's impressions of yourself. Xiaozhi compared the difficulty of forcibly entering the home without an identity and entering the home with an identity. He felt that the trouble caused by the little girl was nothing at all. Since she wants to replace the identity of others, she has to bear the identity and place the consequences. So solve the identity first, and then solve the trouble. Regarding how to change other people's perceptions of the little girl, Xiaozhi also has an idea. She thinks that as long as she finds herself an identity that others don't dare to offend, it's fine, or she is stronger in daily life. Anyway, she is not afraid of having a strong heart. Gossip. After traveling around the village, Xiaozhi had a better understanding of the village. Apart from gossip, everyone said that there was no doctor in the village, which was very inconvenient. The second pillar that had sent Shui Laosan's family to the town's health center came back and brought bad news, saying that Dezhuang fell a bit badly, and the doctor at the health center couldn't see it, so they hurriedly sent the child to the county hospital. The distance from the town to the county was a bit far, so he had to take a car, so he came back early by himself, while the Shui Laosan family went to the county by car overnight. Xiaozhi didn't know how the child fell and why the consequences were so serious, but she knew that there were no medical facilities in more than a dozen nearby villages. The nearest health center to the village is the only one in the town. The doctor in the health center may still be a barefoot doctor. He doesn't see any disease except colds and fevers. If the villagers are unlucky for some serious illnesses, or have more severe bumps, they have to run. Go to the county hospital. The town's health center is more of a mascot-like display function. After learning this information, Xiaozhi's mind turned around, and she also had some knowledge about the barefoot doctor. In the 1960s and 1970s, due to the lack of medical personnel and drugs in the vast rural areas, in order to solve the problem of farmers' difficulty in seeing a doctor, the state implemented a policy of informal medical personnel in rural areas. Go to the lower level to serve as medical staff to serve the farmers and solve this problem. These barefoot doctors do not need to be licensed or formally established. They are under the leadership and guidance of the local health center. They are not formal doctors, but they are not ordinary farmers. Their characteristic is that they are both farmers and doctors. When the farm is busy, you need to go to the land, and when the farm is slack, you need to go to practice medicine, and farming can save people. Xiaozhi felt that with her ability and ingenuity, she would definitely be qualified for the position of a barefoot doctor. As for the specific implementation, she still needs to plan carefully. After collecting the information he wanted, in order to save the consumption of talisman, Xiaozhi decided to return to the mountain to make a plan. Alas, I have to be a caveman one more day. This kind of life is really bald. Fortunately, she will be able to live a normal life from tomorrow. After she returned to the cave, she practiced for a while before she began to perfect her identity background. First of all, she must speak farther about where she came from. If she speaks too close, even if the traffic is inconvenient at this time, she may encounter fabricated villagers. In case someone came to the place she fabricated, as soon as she chats with others and learns that she is from a certain village, but he has no impression, and thus finds out that his identity is abnormal, it is not good. So we have to make up a place farther away, at least from a place where it takes a few days and nights to take a train, so that no one should run over all the way and mistakenly recognize her by mistake. Secondly, the background of the distant relatives of the little girl's father also needs to be fabricated. For example, the father gave him to a widowed elderly as a granddaughter. As for why he came back at this time, it was because the old man passed away, so she came back to find her without relatives and no reason. Father. Finally, she also thought about the identity of the old man. He is a barefoot doctor, and she herself has learned medicine from the old man for more than 10 years. She has already taken up a teacher and can take over the work of the old man. Anyway, the barefoot doctor does not need a certificate. As for the identity of the barefoot doctor, if registering something, she can say that she wanted to go home to find her father, so she didn't register in the old man's hometown. It was the first time that the barefoot doctor pretended to be a close contact. She didn't understand the specific rules and regulations. If something was wrong, if the confession couldn't be passed by then, she would use ecstasy to confuse other people. As for medical skills, she will see if she can find someone to follow her tomorrow and go to the town health center. There should be some study manuals for barefoot doctors. Her spiritual consciousness is so strong that it will definitely be fine to memorize all of them. Moreover, she has spiritual power and spiritual consciousness to cheat. Injections, acupuncture, heartbeat, and pulse diagnosis are all small cases. She also has practiced martial arts. In the past, she used to practice various bruises and bones, which is the so-called long-term illness. Doctor, her bone-setting technique is just now. Summing up in this way, her medical skills might be better than ordinary barefoot doctors. Xiaozhi has done some construction in her heart and feels that there is no need for guilty conscience and guilt to pretend to be a doctor. After completing the identity setting, Xiaozhi finally understood something of his mind, and continued to practice race against time. The reason why she is so relieved of pretending to be a little girl is that she is not afraid that her identity will be exposed when she comes back. This is also valid. The first is that the little girl was abandoned by her father and abandoned in this era. If the father was more cruel, she might no longer be in the world. And even if she is still alive, does she still remember this place? After all, she was only 5 years old when she was sent away, and her address memory when she was a child should be very vague. But even if she is alive and remembers the address, she will not necessarily come back, because she has a high probability of being married. Although this year is a new society, many old concepts have not changed. The married daughter still pays attention to the water thrown out by the married daughter. Even if she is married in a neighboring village, her married daughter will always be despised when she returns to her natal family, not to mention that she is being married. Dad gave up. I don't know how far it was sent, so I probably won't marry back here. In the age of inconvenient transportation, a woman who marries far away rarely returns to her natal family once in her life. When she was a child, she was sent far enough and married far away, so the probability of returning is almost zero. Moreover, Xiaozhi felt that this little girl could do something to her stepmother. She must be someone who has her own ideas, otherwise she should be as forbearing as those virtuous girls, just tolerate the stepmother silently, and her father sent her away because of the stepmother. She should hate her dad. How could she come back if she married out? Xiaozhi replaced herself, and felt that if she was treated like this by her father, she would definitely not come back, so she didn't worry about losing her identity at all. After cultivating for a whole night, feeling the spiritual power in the body filled again, Xiaozhi nodded in satisfaction, then ate breakfast and began to disguise himself. Why do you want to disguise yourself? There is a story in it. I remember that in the 1970s, her portable space was still usable. She often drank the spiritual spring water inside, and used the things in the space for eating and drinking. She hides and eats alone every day, eats big fish and meat, and then uses various sunscreens every morning, afternoon, and evening, and regular skin care, to raise herself white, tender and beautiful, which is simply a flower in the village. Later, Gu Chaoying complained about her for a long time, saying that she was a sabi. In the 70s when the whole people were skinny and dark, She actually made herself so maverick, for fear that others would not see her strangeness. So this summer solstice we learned a lesson and decided even if you can't lose weight quickly, at least cover up your skin tone. She wandered around in the mountains and found some Rehmannia glutinosa, and dug a lot back together with the roots. Rehmannia glutinosa is a common weed. Its roots were used for dyeing in ancient times and can be dyed a very beautiful golden yellow. She mashed the Rehmannia root and some grass leaves separately, and then added them together one by one, adding an appropriate amount of water to make a dull yellow color. After adjusting the paint, she dyed all the exposed skin, and by the way modified the shadow on her face to make her cheeks look sunken in. Because there is no mirror, she can only use the water surface of the mountain spring. There is mud under the water, and the sky above, and because the water is undulating, the things that can be seen are not clearer than real mirrors, and she doesn't know that she will naturally not after putting on makeup. She was a little worried, but no matter how entangled it was useless. This was the best disguise she could do. The author has something to say. When writing about the barefoot doctor, I suddenly remembered a barefoot doctor in our village. She was not a barefoot doctor, but her husband was a barefoot doctor. So after her husband died, she took over his husband's position. Continue to practice medicine. Her only 3 skills are to prescribe cold medicine, cough syrup, and fever injections. If all these 3 tricks are used up and the illness is not good, she will send you to the hospital. I used to think she was a bit weird because she couldn't cure any disease, but she was a doctor. When I learned how she became a doctor, I felt that the whole world was illusory, too sloppy, and the position of a doctor was okay. For the replacement, the barefoot doctor status in our hometown was taken over from the family. Yes, your author is an author with rich life experience. She has been poisoned by barefoot doctors. The symptoms of some diseases may be the same, but the medicines taken are very different. I was ill when I was a child. My mother took me to see a barefoot doctor. After taking the medicine and getting an injection, it was not good. She thought it might be because the barefoot doctor in our village was unreliable, so she took me to see a doctor in a neighboring village. The doctor in the neighboring village was also barefoot. Doctor, it turns out that the 2 doctors diagnosed the same and prescribed the same medicine, but my illness became more and more serious, and there was no other way but to go to the hospital. The doctor at the hospital said after the examination that the disease was a bit exaggerated. It stands to reason that it could not be like this at the beginning of the disease. I asked if I had seen the doctor before. My mother told the doctor about the medicine I used before. The doctor said that the medicine was used wrongly. This disease can't eat those things, so it becomes more and more serious. Fortunately, it's not an emergency, ha ha ha, so I'm still alive. Another time I got nephritis. My dad also took me to see a barefoot doctor. The doctor thought it was ordinary edema, so he asked me to dig out the leaves of the grass that I didn't know, and then smashed it into mud and applied it on my body to reduce the swelling. I tossed for a month. People are almost dead. At that time, the whole body was swollen like a Japanese sumo wrestler, couldn't eat anything, couldn't bend his joints, couldn't walk, couldn't get up by himself, and he was very tired and didn't want to move. But the doctor said exercise to reduce swelling, and you can't lie down all the time, so you have to stick to eating and walking every day. When you walk, the skin on your body will make a squeaky sound of rubbing a balloon with your hands, and you feel like your whole body is full of air. Same. When sleeping, I can't lie flat because I can't breathe when I lie flat. At that time, I slept with 2 super large pillows behind my back. Later, my dad felt that if I were to get the barefoot doctor down, I should be dying, so he hurriedly took me to the city to see a doctor. It took 2 months to get cured. At that time, I was very young and I didn't know how to be afraid. Until one day after I was growing up, I cleaned my house and suddenly turned to my sister's diary. She wrote in the diary. My father said that I had a very serious illness when he returned from the city. The doctor said that he would die after sending it a few days later. At that time, she felt it was a bolt from the blue, and the impression was too deep. I still remember the adjective she used. I never knew that I was on the verge of death. The first time I discovered that the situation was so serious, I suddenly became scared at that time, and then I cried as I cleaned the house, ha 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 ha. I ran to ask my mother if it was true. My mother was very cold and said yes. I was shocked by her indifferent tone. She cried and asked why she was so calm and if she didn't love me. Say, aren't you still alive now? What's so sad? I feel that the parents of the older generation really have a sense of fascinating calmness. Titian collapsed in the past and the color remains unchanged. As long as the cub does not die, even if it is half dead, it is not a big deal.